Good evening and welcome to the April 7th, 2022 Parks and Recreation Commission regular video meeting. I am Jody McCarthy, Parks and Recreation Commission Chair. In accordance with Proclamation 20-28.10 and the Governor's Extended Safe Start Order, tonight's Parks and Recreation Commission meeting is using video conferencing technology provided by Zoom. The Zoom video of this meeting is being recorded and will broadcast live via Zoom and will be uploaded to the city's YouTube channel later this evening. City staff and consulting guests are participating in tonight's meeting remotely. Other public audience members are listening to the meeting by telephone or via the internet. Welcome to all and thank you for joining us tonight. Commissioners, please turn on your microphones. Will the city staff please call the roll?
Chair McCarthy.
Here.
Vice Chair Struck.
Here.
Commissioner Cohen.
Here.
Commissioner Birkenwald. Commissioner Westberg.
Here.
Commissioner Markson. Commissioner Burstein.
I'm here.
Commissioners, before we start the business of tonight's meeting, I want to suggest a few rules to help the meeting run smoothly. If a commissioner has a question, please use the raise hand feature. I will do my best to recognize commissioners in the order in which hands are raised. Everyone will be asked to limit himself or herself to one question and to one clarifying question if necessary, so that each commissioner has a chance to ask a question before a commissioner is given another chance to ask a question. Additionally, prior to speaking, please state your name for those listening in on the meeting. Tonight's agenda will not include in-person public appearances in accordance with Proclamation 20-28.11 and the Governor's Extended Safe Start Order. However, individuals wishing to speak live during the appearances portion of our meeting may do so by telephone or using the Zoom teleconferencing application. Provided, however, they registered their desire to speak with the city admin staff by 4 p.m. today. Our city admin staff will call on you by name or telephone number when it is your turn to speak. This is the opportunity for anyone to speak to the Parks and Recreation Commission. All remarks will be addressed to the commission as a whole and not to individual commission members or staff members. If any person makes personal, impertinent, or slanderous remarks or becomes boisterous, threatening, or personally abusive while addressing the commission, I may request that the person leave the meeting. When it is your turn to address the commission, be sure to speak audibly and state your name for the record. Your comments will be limited to 3 minutes. I will provide you with a 30-second and 15-second warning when your time is about to expire. City staff, is there anyone who has signed up for appearances that wishes to address the commission?
Yes, Chair, we have Sue Stewart, and I'll promote her to panelist now.
Thank you.
Hi, am I on?
You are.
Hello. Oh, Sue Stewart, Friends of Luther Burbank Park President. Friends has 405 signatures on our petition against having a mountain bike facility in Upper Luther Burbank Park as of 4 p.m. today. Those signing are all adults of voting age, and we'll be happy to share the names with park commissioners, city council members, and the city staff. Friends understand you will be receiving the built design in April, but no date has been publicized on the city website today. We understand from the Mercer Island Reporter story of March 23rd that the city staff has had the plan for about a month now. Thank you for comments on Agenda Bill 6001 that Upper Luther is a questionable location. As you know, the vandalized BMX course that closed down was hidden in the first ravine out of sight of the general public. We have stated before that a mountain bike facility does not align with the master plan's unanimous vote from Mayor Brian Cairns and his council in 2006, nor the 2012 recommitment to the master plan by Bruce Bassett's council, demanding only low impact uses anywhere in our beloved 75-acre park. The Mercer Island Bike Club is not sanctioned by island schools, it's private. Members are mostly middle school age kids, and their website lists Pioneer Park, Island Park, and Upper Luther Burbank Park as their practice areas already. They also list 11 area mountain bike parks, 4 to 5 times larger than our 20-acre forest. These bike riders have local area options. Competitions, Gig Harbor, Roslyn, Methow Valley, Winthrop, Riverside, Spokane. So travel is part of this expansive sport. In terms of environmental damage to our park, the change from BMX, a simple bike, to the term bike skills area, a mountain bike term, is a whole generational difference in the type of bike, of their tires, shock absorbers, and advanced braking systems. These bikes can tear up native plants and heavily compact soils. Google BMX versus mountain bike. There's no comparison. Steep and silty Upper Luther Burbank is not the right place for a mountain bike facility. Friends is asking for Upper Luther Burbank Park to Friends of Luther Burbank Park is asking for Upper Luther Burbank Park to be protected as an open space park in this year's comprehensive plan update. We hope you will join us in that designation. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. All right, next up on the agenda, we have the department reports, and we welcome Recreation Manager Ryan Daly.
Good evening, Parks Commission. I'm sorry, I'm looking a little dark here. Having some challenges with the Wi-Fi, but I'm going to share my screen and give you the department report. If for some reason we run into issues, Chair, I have no hard feelings if you cut me short. So let me know if there's any challenges, but I will share now. All right, is that showing up for you?
It is.
All right, here we go. So as you heard from public comment, there was some questions around the bike skills area, or I guess some comments. And so the Parks Commission is aware that we have scheduled a April 25th meeting for 5:30 p.m. And this is a great opportunity for the community to come out and share their feelings around the report, the final report that comes forward, and that hasn't been released yet. Ms. Stewart did reference a draft report that we had received, and we were working with a consultant to finish up. So that will be provided via the Let's Talk link, as well as sent directly to the Parks Commission. And we will publicize that so that the information gets out to the facility users, as well as the Friends of Luther and all the rest of the community members who may have input on that. Jody.
Thank you, Commissioner McCarthy. I just wanted to say that I have an email saying that it was on April 26th. So can we clarify that?
You are correct. Whoops, I'm sorry. You are correct. I plugged in that date a little premature. It is April 26th.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And that's a Tuesday, I believe. Mercerdale Playground, I have an update there. We still are awaiting the play surface to be installed. We need that dry weather. Today was a great example of the weather we need, and we're getting close. So we're continuing to watch that. We're waiting for that perfect combination of weather, temperature, and no rain to be able to install that surfacing. We do anticipate the concrete flat work being done April 19th. So that'll continue to move that project along and be ready for the kids to get out there and play as well. We have received some of the plaques for the park benches, and they're going to be installed here very soon. And you can see those on the right-hand side. So for additional information, please visit the Let's Talk page on Mercerdale Park. Board and commission openings. So we do have on the Parks and Recreation Commission, we do have 2 open seats with terms expiring. Please, if you have any interest, especially those on this call, don't forget to get your applications in ahead of that deadline. So applications received after the deadline will not be reviewed. So just a heads up to get those in as early as possible. The skate park, it has a new name, or a name, I should say. Before it was just the Mercerdale Skate Park. It has been renamed for Kirk Robinson to the Kirk Robinson Skate Park. Kirk, as many of you know, was a Mercer Island resident. He served on the Parks and Recreation Commission originally. Just an amazing individual. And if you had a chance to get to know him and talk with him, his energy just came across. And I was greatly impacted by Kirk when I got to know him when he came onto the Parks and Recreation Commission. And it really personally energized me in moving forward with a lot of our parks related initiatives. He touched a number of lives. He was a fireman for Bothell. He was a volunteer in a lot of aspects here on Mercer Island. Just an amazing individual. And so I can't do him justice by speaking about him here, but please review the April 5th City Council meeting. There was a presentation there, as well as the agenda bill. Talks a lot about Kirk's life and frankly, his legacy that he left with Mercer Island. So it's a great tribute to have the skate park named in his likeness. And so one of the things that this did bring up for the Parks Commission to contemplate here in the future is we don't currently have a park asset naming policy, which made this process a bit difficult. So we are going to be working on that later, probably in Q4 of this year, to establish one so that we can recognize these island residents and local individuals who have done so much for our community. So more to come on that, but it is something that was identified through this process. Summer celebration. This is a repeat slide from the past, but we're really excited. We're working hard. We're booking a lot of the bands. We actually have the contract for the fireworks moving forward right now. So that is going to be on July 9th, a one-day festival. We're excited to have it back. I think the community is very excited and moving forward with a number of our partnerships there. But we do need some help, and that help comes in financial sponsorships. Katie Herzog, our recreation coordinator, who is coordinating the summer celebration this year, is working with local organizations and businesses and fundraising. So if you have any ideas, or if you have individuals who may be interested in sponsoring summer celebration, the link there is at the bottom on our website. And those are the different levels of sponsorships that we are soliciting. The Preschool Association Circus is back. This is a really great opportunity. The Recreation Division is working with the preschool. We're actually partnering this year on the circus. We're hosting it at the community center, indoors and outdoors. Should be a really great event on April 30th from 10 to 2 o'clock. There will be more information posted on the Preschool Association website, as well as on our city websites moving forward. The parks, that picture on the right is our Luther Burbank tennis / pickleball courts. I don't know, that those cracks kind of look like a chia pet, I guess, in my estimation, but our parks crews are out there pressure washing the courts, getting a lot of the, I don't know, best term to use is gunk off of them. Our trees, though we have a great tree canopy, they do tend to create some challenges with our athletic surfaces. And so our park maintenance team is out there pressure washing those. It's a little bit earlier, in all honesty, than we've done in the past. We usually try to wait till closer to May, but what we've seen, and this is one of those changes that's come over the last 2 years, and frankly, a change with pickleball being out there, you're seeing that more what we would consider off-season usage. So that's really influencing our recreation or our parks maintenance aspects and when we need to perform those maintenance duties so that those courts remain safe and playable. You'll note that those cracks are pretty deep and in some challenging areas at times. And so our crew is going to fill them with some temporary substances, but with the anticipation that those are going to be replaced in the near future. Additionally, the planter beds and park area signs are all being cleaned and replanted, as well as our athletic turf, seeding, sanding, preparing those athletic sports fields in preparation for the spring season that's already underway. And we've had this sort of really wet period, and then we've got some really nice weather, and it does create some maintenance challenges. So our crew is out there addressing those and keeping them in solid shape as we go toward the spring, and giving them some resiliency as we go into the summer months as well. The community center, wow, our phones are ringing. We are hosting numerous tours daily, as well as receiving requests for rental bookings. Today, we actually hosted a large video shoot within the facility. I can't tell you who it was, but it was not Seattle stormy out, and we did have a new bird in the building. So it was a really fun day. It was a great opportunity for us, frankly, to do something we haven't done in the past. And I think this is another one of those changes and opportunities for us to look at how we utilize the facility. And this was one of those corporate style opportunities that we were able to host today. The other part is, looking at May with the Mercer room being reopened, we do have 13 scheduled events in May. That's a great number. And that's pretty close to on par with where we were pre-pandemic. So we're a little anxious, I could say, as we move forward, because we are receiving such a large volume of interest right now, and our staff is working quickly to get up to speed and make sure that those are successful events. Don Cohen, I see your hand up.
Yes, Don Cohen, what kind of events are the large scale ones scheduled for May?
Great question. Weddings. Predominantly weddings. We do have a couple of seminars as well. And then Rotary will be coming back in the month of May, also twice a month, to host their luncheons as well. So these are pretty large scale. They fall within what we consider our packages. If you recall, when we were talking about facility use and allocation, we've really grouped our bookings together in a more efficient way. And it worked. I mean, for lack of any more response there, it's worked out really well. The other thing is we have expanded our hours. We're now open on Mondays, 10 to 7, to go along with being open Friday and Saturday, as well as during the middle of the week. So things are going very well. We're very busy at the facility. What we're not seeing a lot of right now is the casual drop-in patrons. In the past, we had a number of patrons that would come, have coffee, sit in the lobby area. We're just not quite seeing that. We're seeing some of our drop-in sports and users hanging out in the facility and utilizing it, but not as many passive users as we've seen pre-pandemic. And I think that's we're seeing that in a number of other areas as well, or I guess regionally with other community facilities. So we're going to keep an eye on that. Other than that, thank you. And I will pass it back to you, Chair McCarthy.
Thank you, Ryan. Okay, the first item of regular business is to review and consider approving the minutes from the March 3rd, 2022 meeting. Commissioners, may I have a motion to approve the minutes of the March 3rd, 2022 meeting?
So moved. Vice Chair Struck.
Okay. Commissioner Burstein, you have a question? You're muted. Paul, you're muted.
Sorry, yep, sorry. I just second the motion.
Okay, perfect. All right. So there is a motion by Vice Chair Struck and a second by Commissioner Burstein. Commissioners, does anyone have any questions or comments before we vote? Commissioner Struck.
Yes, thank you. Under the department report, I'd like to amend the description in the second line where it says the city council's meetings. I would like to add the word unanimous approval of the Luther Burbank's 30% design for two reasons. One, it's obviously a little bit more accurate. And secondly, I think it demonstrates the council's confidence in the commission's work.
I don't have a problem with that. So give me a motion that has that in it, please.
I move that the department report be amended to say city council meetings unanimous approval of the Luther Burbank docks 30% design.
All right. Do we have someone, okay, to do a second?
This is Commissioner Westberg. I will second that motion.
Okay, great. So we have, and then does that go along with approving the minutes besides, and with the addition of, we're saying that, correct? I just want to make sure we're getting our motion correct. So we have a first motion about approving the minutes and seconded by Commissioner Burstein. And then we have a second motion that is Commissioner Struck amending the minutes to add the word unanimous. And that one is seconded by Commissioner Westberg. Did I get that correct? And Raven, can we have a roll call, please?
Okay, Chair McCarthy,
Aye.
Vice Chair Struck,
Aye.
Commissioner Cohen,
Aye.
Commissioner Birkenwald, Commissioner.
Aye.
Commissioner Westberg,
Aye.
Commissioner Markson.
Aye.
Commissioner Burstein.
Aye.
Thank you. That motion passes and the minutes are approved. And I also want to make note of Commissioner Birkenwald joining the meeting just before we did that motion. The second item of regular business is the Aubrey Davis Park Trail Safety Improvement Public Project, Public Engagement and Design Input. Say that 5 times fast. And we welcome Capital Improvement Project Manager Paul West. And take it away, Paul.
Thank you so much, Chair McCarthy. Paul West, CIP Project Manager. I'm joined tonight by Liz Gibson, Fong Nguyen, and Corrine Schmidt from KPG Somas. They're our design team on this, and I will be just making a few introductory comments, and then they will do their presentation. You may remember a year ago that the Mercer Island City Council approved the project framework and asked the Parks and Rec Commission to develop a recommendation for a 30% design. So tonight we're starting that process. What has happened between a year ago and now is that we finalized an agreement with the Department of Commerce for the $500,000 grant that's funding this project. We did an RFQ process where we interviewed design firms, including the chair as a panelist on that interview panel, and we selected KPG Somas as the consultant and negotiated a scope of work and a contract with them. They started work last fall and have been developing the project framework through the winter. We launched a public process at the end of January, and they will discuss that in detail now. So I'm going to hand it off to Liz Gibson.
Okay, thanks very much, Paul. My name is Liz Gibson. I'm the KPG Somas project manager for the Aubrey Davis Trail Safety Improvements. Almost got that out, Jody. So good evening, Parks Commission. I'd like to thank you for giving us the opportunity to discuss the improvements tonight. What we're going to do is give you some background on where we're at in the design process to help facilitate your discussion about the various concepts that we have, where first of all, we'll give you an overview of the project, like the main goals and that kind of thing. And then we're going to go through the concepts. There's 3 areas where we're focusing for improvements along the trail. And so each one of those areas, we're going to break them down into sections so that we can have a discussion after we've done a little bit of a presentation on it. But at the same time, if you have questions about anything, please raise your hand and let us know so that we can, you know, if we need to discuss something while we're going through this, we'd be more than welcome to answer questions. So next slide, Hong. So just an overview for the project goals. The goal, as you may know, of this project obviously is to improve safety and create a more enjoyable experience for all of the trail and park users. We're focusing mostly on low impact approaches for the improvements for the trail section from 60th Avenue Southeast to 76th Avenue along the trail and through the Aubrey Davis Park area. One of the included in those improvements will be some placemaking, as you see when we'll go through some of the concepts. Next slide. So it's just as an overview of the project scope to bring everybody up to speed if you're not super familiar with it. This map shows you the improvement areas that we'll be looking at. Some of these have been ranked sort of a higher and lower priority for improvements, and we'll talk through that in a bit. But overall, the trail improvements are, as I said, to make pedestrian and bicycle movements safer and more predictable in key locations. Also to include signage and pavement markings, restoring the trail shoulders to make it more comfortable for trail users to either, if there's a bike coming, they can step off the trail and that kind of thing to increase capacity. Adding wayfinding signage markings to help people maybe to find a bypass route if they want to ride faster and to help families get through the area, and an understanding that this is being used both by pedestrians and bicyclists the whole way through. Perhaps channeling cross-trail traffic where there's intersections for people crossing over, not only pedestrians but bicyclists. So we're going to look at some improvements for that. Also including, as I said, art and placemaking elements, and then some vegetation management for sight distance where needed, where appropriate. So as we move on to this, like I said, we're going to talk about that we have 3 priority improvement areas of the those circles that you're looking at. The first of these is the West Mercer Way trail crossing. The second will be the trail connection underneath the 72nd Avenue Southeast overpass. And the third will be the restroom facilities at the playfield nodes. So all of these areas were brought forward during the master planning process, and these are priority areas according to the public and what came out during that process. So what we'd like to do now is I'll give you an overview of the concept, and if you have questions about what some more detail that we have in that, please feel free to ask them, and then we'll go through the feedback that we got from the public and give you a little bit of discussion about that. And then we'd like to turn it over to the commission just to talk about it. We'll give some recommendations on 2 of the improvement areas. And the third one, we have a recommendation, but we'd like a bit more of discussion from the commission to talk about that area. So any questions so far? Are we good to go? Okay. So let's move to the first one. The first one, as I said, is the West Mercer Way trail crossing. So this one included 2 concepts. One constituted 3 smaller pocket nodes for people to get off the trail and to have a smaller gathering to take a break, sit, you know, have a drink of water, that kind of thing, take their bike off the trail and allow for some of that pedestrian bike traffic to go through and not impede that and sort of get the groups off the trail. The second concept would be more of a central node area, kind of giving a little bit of a bigger area for people to get off, for like bigger groups, same kind of thing, but maybe a little more grouped in one area, so a little bit different, but both of these concepts provide the same kind of improvements. So we're talking about improving wayfinding signage, perhaps, and then improving the crossing nodes, so providing some more paved area where people are crossing over the street, both going north and south and east and west, adding additional wayfinding on the east side of the crossing over there. We're also talking about potentially removing a sidewalk connection that goes alongside the on-ramp for the I-90 freeway to help kind of redirect people to a safer, more easily accessed area along the trail instead of coming around the side, and to remove some impervious area. So the next slide will show you kind of an overview, a bigger picture of what those.
Interrupt you because Vice Chair Struck has a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Just for definitional purposes, so I understand, could you define what you mean by node? And then maybe a little bit of explanation of from this picture A and B.
Sure.
Would it be, because I walked the area yesterday, so it looks like you would be, I'm not sure what you're going to do there in terms of the surface and so forth. So if you could just explain
Sure.
that a little bit now or later, I don't really care, but just I
Sure.
don't want to have a better understanding.
Oh, okay. No, we can just jump into it right now, actually, because that was kind of the next slide that I was going to. So what we mean by a node is just basically an area where where people can gather and get off of the trail. So we're providing some paved surface. It could be decorative. It just could be a simple concrete area that's scored or something like that. And part of that node would provide some amenities for people, including some seating. There might be a kiosk, there may be a bike rack. So it gives us a little bit of opportunity to get people off the trail and, you know, avoid some of the conflicts. And I know according to the master plan and the Parks Department and the city staff has said that this area through here, there are people, and I have done this myself, who gather and sit in the little lawn areas and that kind of thing. So basically trying to provide people with more of a formalized area to get off the trail and meet people. So the first one, the alternative A would be a bigger area for people to gather, kind of centralized all in one place. And we're actually recommending leaning more towards this concept because of public feedback and because it's, and Fawn can go into some of those reasons in just a minute because she's going to talk about the public feedback. And the second one, alternative B, kind of breaks it down into just little pocket nodes that would kind of be slipped in amongst the trees. And these are really conceptual. So we really, depending on which way we go, we have to look at how they fit, how the grading works with that area, what the disturbance is going to be like for the trees, because we want to maintain that tree canopy. So does that kind of answer your question with that one?
I'll just point out
yes,
that Councilmember Reynolds also has his hand up.
Okay.
Can you just describe to me what the anticipated routing would be for a bicycle going north on West Mercer Way that intends to go on the path across the bridge? Would your vision be that they would go up to the crosswalk and go in the crosswalk? Or right now, what I do, for example, is I turn left as if I'm going to go on I-90 and then cut onto the sidewalk and then cut onto the bike path. But that requires two more than 90-degree turns in a fairly short distance. It's inconvenient, let's just put it that way, and maybe a little unsafe.
So you're talking about coming either east on I-90 and turning up West Mercer Way?
So you're going north on West Mercer Way and wanting to go west on I-90.
Okay, I might let Corinne onto this one a little bit, but we haven't actually discussed how those turning movements would work, because we're kind of conceptually looking at redirecting people, but that's something that we could look at and see if we can
and I think the same question would apply to people coming from the east on Aubrey Davis Park that want to cross West Mercer Way. Are they expected to go into the street and then cross at the crosswalk, or ride down the sidewalk to get to the crosswalk, or cross the street and then ride the sidewalk on the other side? You know, what's the way that through traffic should go through on bicycles?
Is there a way to allow to point, just so that I make sure my internal map is pointing north up? And I understand. Is that possible?
North is up in these diagrams, if I understand it correctly. I don't think I have the technology to point, do I? From
okay. So somebody coming on the trail from, say, that would be the top right corner of these graphics. Yes, so the trail follows the curb line through there, and then you would make essentially a right turn through that crosswalk to continue.
Okay, so wait, you're describing somebody coming from Seattle?
Coming from the park.
Okay, so they're coming from the park and they're going to be arriving. I think the park, okay, where the mouse or the pointer is going now is from
the bridge.
That's from the bridge, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
so coming the other way.
So coming from the other way, aren't they going to dump out onto the sidewalk 20 yards south of the crosswalk, give or take?
If they wanted to continue on West Mercer Way instead of going to the trail?
No, they're on the trail coming
Yeah.
across Aubrey Davis Park by the basketball courts and things like that.
Mhm.
The trail will dump them out onto the sidewalk on the east side of West Mercer Way.
That is correct. Yes.
That is, yeah.
But not at the crosswalk. They're going to be, I think, to the south of the cross. That's north. I think they'll be to the south of the crosswalk, 20 yards or so.
They
So-
should be coming, the trail is continuous through the crosswalk going.
So you're saying the
Westbound.
trail from Aubrey Davis comes out where it shows bushes there now? There's actually a trail coming through right at the crosswalk?
You come down that slope onto the sidewalk and then take a right across so it doesn't put you south of the crosswalk.
It doesn't, it's only north. So where it says, I guess I hadn't noticed at I-90 trail there. I thought the trail dumped you out south of the crosswalk, but okay, it's north. So,
It is north, yeah.
okay, so the vision is the bikers would then ride on the sidewalk and cross in the crosswalk. Is that the expectation?
Yeah, and then right now it's a 10-foot wide or 12-foot wide area through there. And we're actually talking about potentially creating we could have another smaller node in there for people if they were meeting or something like that, an additional wayfinding. But there is a relative amount of space through that area for coming down the hill towards the crosswalk and then going west across the bridge.
If memory serves, the crosswalk or the sidewalk itself there, once you get off the trail and onto the sidewalk, is relatively narrow though. So I'd be a little nervous about it. And my memory may be faulty.
That might have been part of the
it is.
recent improvements that were done. Do we have the ability to pull up Google Street View quickly to share? I think it's possibly up to date.
I think Farm can do that probably.
A little hard to tell from the
Yeah,
side
yeah,
angle.
yeah.
A vertical look might be easier.
Yeah.
Inevitably, however you crop an image, what you want to see is just outside.
Exactly. And I have a hard enough time with spatial relations in the best of circumstances. So.
She's looks like Bong's doing that right now for us.
I am remembering when we were out there a month or so ago, the crosswalk project had widened that area on the east side of West Mercer Way. And also, I think Commissioner Reynolds is that a lot of the vegetation had been overgrowing the trail there, making it feel narrower, and that's been cut back as a result of the crosswalk project. So I think if you visited it now, you would see that it's more spacious.
I also think last time we were out there, we talked about the width of it, and I believe it was 12 feet all the way coming down and through because it included the shoulders. So there is the parking. So you want to drop. Yeah, so you can see actually that vegetation has been trimmed back, but that lady's just about to get into the crosswalk area.
Okay, so
that has been widened.
Okay, so that is the east side of West Mercer Way. Is that correct? We're looking at right now.
Yes.
Okay, and so the trail is coming in. You're right. Okay, wait, we go back to where you were. Sorry, can you rotate back around?
Yeah.
Okay, right there.
Yeah.
That trail. So the bikes are going to come down. They will cross across the trail and then go across in the crosswalk. Is that the vision?
Yes.
Okay, and vehicles coming from bicycles coming from the south on the street. So to the right in that diagram, because they'll be coming down the hill there from whatever street that is. I've forgotten, 70 something, no, 20 something. They'll be coming down the street. Is it your vision that they will like turn left like they're going onto the freeway and then ride down the sidewalk on the west side, or will they come up and take the crosswalk across?
I would imagine you'd come and take the crosswalk across if you were coming from the south heading north.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Or-
think the refuge island would allow you to make kind of a two-stage left turn. So if you came up into that crosswalk, you could wait to cross that southbound traffic. Or, you know, we're looking at kind of expanding a little bit in the corner to the right, kind of by the ramp metered when flashing sign there, to create a more seamless access for people heading to that little trail connection across the ramps there on the southwest side. So that might, you know, for some people that might be their preferred routing, is to turn left short of the intersection and roll up there, and we'd try to make that a smoother connection to the trail.
Yeah,
That's a really good point.
If you could, yeah, that connection between the north-south crosswalk across the freeway on-ramp and the trail, if there were a way to make that so you didn't have to make such sharp turns, it might be a little safer for everybody involved.
Okay. Okay, any other?
Sorry, I took enough time.
Oh, no worries. That's what we're here for. Any other questions? Sarah? Did you have your hand up?
I just agree with Craig. Because if you've got your clips on and your bike, it's really hard to get out, stop at the crosswalk, and then continue on. So I totally agree with what Craig's saying.
Okay.
Stopping and walking is something that bikes really hate to do.
Yeah.
now maybe it's unavoidable, but
I know. my clips are really worn down from that. Okay. If there's no further questions on that, we'll go to the next slide. So as I said, we have our recommendation is more of the central node, and I'm going to let Fong give us a little bit more of an overview of the public feedback that we got to support that, and to give you an idea of what the comments were on this.
Sure. And just to give more a little background on the public engagement effort, we really started the campaigning of the project. I mean, project's probably been the project's probably been advertised already on Let's Talk even before this project started, just because of the master plan. But spurring off of that, it was really end of January that we really made the campaign to announce that this project's coming online, and made a concerted effort to put sandwich boards, so outdoor sandwich boards at 10 locations throughout Mercer Island, even across the trail where most people are meeting in front of the library. So just making a concerted effort to make sure that everyone knew that this project was coming online and needing feedback. So we provided that, as well as a survey that we launched right after the open house. So that was started for the advertisement, started end of January, and then we had the open house mid-February, and then we closed the survey end of kind of around St. Patrick's Day. So mid-March is when we close in. So all this feedback that you're listening from here on out is really from the Let's Talk platform, as well as the online survey and input from the open house that was held mid-March or mid-February. And in general, with these two alternatives for the central node and the pocket nodes, general feedback on design was that people really were okay with either option. They liked both, in fact, and they even asked if both could be done, but they also were knew that there was some budget that we could look at later on, just for the design and feasibility of everything. But they do acknowledge that cyclists do gather in this area, so there is a need for an area to meet and gather, and then also acknowledge that there are necessary needs for wayfinding, as well as unnecessary needs of impervious surfaces such as the sidewalk along the curb. So that they could see do away with. And yes, we talked about it earlier, is that bikers aren't really using that route; they're really using the road. And if we can provide other amenities to support that, that'd be great. And then dialing in a little more on the details of the preferences from the open house polling, which we did kind of throughout the presentation and open house during the meeting, and also the survey. We had the same polling questions posed to everyone as to what their preferences were. And really people, they said that they could go with either one, but there was more of a leaning towards the central node. And as we talked through it, internally with staff, after we kind of consolidated all the comments, we felt that option A really had better access for maintenance. It was closer to the road. Being closer to the road also provides more visibility for that safety and just all eyes on the area. In fact, and also having it close to the road kind of reduces the clutter within the park. That was the other idea that someone mentioned on Let's Talk. It's going to be less busier. It's also a better wayfinding to kind of see the node and trying to find someone if you're trying to meet with them. And then, like I mentioned earlier, there was a question of liking both, and can we combine both? And we would look at that more in detail during the design as far as feasibility. So that was really, you can see there was our preferences internally, and then the preferences with the public was kind of in sync on this design area.
So to help visualize some of the improvements, or to understand what we're
And then, Vice Chair Stark had a question.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Back on the nodes, the central node option, Alt A versus Alt B. Alt A, how many cyclist people do you anticipate could be in this area versus the 3 smaller ones?
I would say we're probably
are you talking like you'd have 30 bicyclists?
No, we're
10 or
talking
5?
maybe 5 or in each one. Like the biggest central node, I envision we could probably get maybe 5 to 8. And if we put in a bike, somewhere where you can lean your bike up or something like that, that would help that. So they're not very large areas. They're just enough so you can meet a friend or get yourself, put your cleats in and drink of water, that kind of thing. So no, not intending it to be a large group area. That would be more likely to happen in the park area by the parking.
Great, thank you. That's helpful. Second question, if I may, or follow up. I don't expect you to do it, but I would like to see, maybe it's in the next phase, but the sidewalk that you're going to remove, I'd be curious as to what the square footage of impervious surface you're removing versus the impervious surface you would be adding at the, at whichever concept of the node that we would finalize on.
Yeah, and we're trying to, that's one reason why we'd like to take that out, so we can offset the amount of impervious surface that we might be adding to the project as well.
Thank you.
Craig.
Yeah, and maybe you guys have talked about this already. If so, you can tell me to shut up. But naively, it seems to me there are 2 types of people that are on bikes going through that area. One is commuters, and one, people from Bellevue to Seattle or whatever, and one is recreational riders. And there are also 2 broad ways to do it. One is to take the route through the park, and one is to go around North Mercer Way and stay on the street. Do we have a sense of the 2 groups of which one tends to go which way? Because I would think the nodes would be very helpful for the recreational riders, but the commuters are just interested in getting on through.
Yeah, they're just going to blast right through. I agree with that.
Yeah.
I don't actually have a sense. I think, Paul, was a bike count done earlier on when they put the crosswalk in, but part of this project may be to provide signage to encourage the commuters to go around the top. I'm not saying that the recreational riders would do that, because a lot of them don't feel like that's a safe route to take. There's not a lot of shoulder going north on West Mercer Way, but the more experienced, maybe commuter bikers or, the faster riders may take it just because it's simpler and easier, and they can stay at a speed to get around the top, and it doesn't take that much longer. So I actually do not know what the numbers would be. So
yeah, I just kind of wondered if the commuters might tend to go through the park because it's the more direct route, whereas the recreational riders, their point is not to get there as fast as possible, it's to enjoy their ride. So maybe they'd go around, but I don't know if that's true or not.
I guess one thing that came through in the during the open house from people's comments was that people were wary of the idea of trying to encourage people to go around the park, because they'd seen, poor driver behavior that might make, somebody, a less confident cyclist, uncomfortable, things like that. So the take home that we got was to show it as available, but then to make, once you enter the park, make it clear that you're in a shared space, and somebody might elect, say, oh gosh, this is just too annoying, you know, at noon on a sunny Saturday to go through the park, I'm going to go around. But you know, during commuting hours, when it might be more predominantly cyclists and fewer, you know, kids or dogs, things like that. You know, so really thinking about this is kind of the location to make people aware of that change from, you know, strictly trail mindset to shared park space mindset. And then this is where people can make that decision for themselves. I'd like to go around, or yeah, I'll ride through the park because it's beautiful and comfortable.
Rory, did you have a question?
Actually, not a question so much as a comment. One sort of taking off on Councilman Reynolds' comment. It's really hard to know who, as a cyclist arriving at that point where the trail intersects West Mercer Way, you know, how you make that decision about whether you're going to go up through the park or whether you're going to go around on the street. I would say that that decision could be influenced by the fact that all of the bicycling guides that show the Mercer Island Loop as a recommended ride show the trail corridor as the route. They don't show North Mercer Way. So I think if you're riding over from Seattle and you're just saying, oh, let's go ride the loop around Mercer Island, and you're following the book says go up and over the hill through the park. Secondly, from a standpoint, I was at the open house, I think, when the comment was made about the North or West Mercer Way perhaps being more for advanced cyclists. But from a technical standpoint, to me, that riding up the hill and then around that tight line curve requires a lot more technical skill and control than does going down West Mercer Way. And that's something to consider as well as far as our messaging. But I really see the value, a main value of the central node as being an opportunity to try to help people make that decision and redirect them one way or the other based on both their preferences as well as their skill as a rider and whether they want to go fast or not. And just so they know that there are options at that point. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Okay. Any other questions at this point? Doesn't look like it. We might just go to the next, I think it was the matrix page. It's just really a qualitative way of looking at the proposed improvements. We're going to do this for each of the improvement areas to show you what might be accomplished by some of the improvements that we're talking about. So for this particular area, providing additional trail striping is going to help with safety. That's basically channelization and that kind of thing. There's not much channelization there, and it might be something that's slow. It might be striping on the pavement and that kind of thing. Secondly, expanding the pavement in high traffic areas. We just talked about the nodes, and then also connections to the crossing itself, going north, south, and east and west. So this would increase the capacity a little bit, safety, and provide some aesthetics. We've been talking about placemaking. Especially important in this area is to reestablish some of the 2-foot shoulders along the trail coming in and out of this area. So that would start kind of around about where the trail comes in from the parking lot, and where we're talking about having those smaller nodes, we'd look at improving the shoulder all the way up to the crosswalk, and then from there on basically kind of up the hill and through that area to allow people to get off the trail if they need to. So that improves capacity, accessibility, and safety. Trimming back some of the overgrown vegetation, a lot of that's already being accomplished, but that checks all the boxes across the board. Provide defined amenities nodes. We talked about that, helping with capacity, safety, and aesthetics. improving wayfinding signage, especially important if we're going to try and help redirect some of the faster riders around the top area, like we've been discussing. That would be safety and potentially aesthetics. And adding some educational signage for lower speed control. So again, we're trying to get people to slow down on this trail. So to take into consideration, there's all kinds of users, dogs, people, kids, families, other bikers who aren't riding very fast. So making an effort to provide some kind of signage to say, hey, you need to slow down. There's people in this area that are using it for all kinds of all amenities and all age groups and abilities. So essentially, so we'd like to open it up to have further discussion about this, give you a few minutes. I know we're trying to keep an eye on the time. We've got two more of these areas to discuss, and we want to leave enough time to talk about the Ferulia field area as well. So
Commissioner Cohen?
Yes, Don Cohen. Do you see, I'm not a regular user of that area, and when I bicycle, I don't have clips or anything, so I'm really very old school, but do you see an increasing number of electric bikes being used coming across the island either way?
I would think so, yeah, and we have been having discussions about that, and that's another addition that we would be concerned about, speed control. So if we can hopefully find some innovative way to say, hey, slow your electric bike down or whatever it is you're using, a scooter and that kind of thing. But I definitely anticipate, and I think Kareem would agree with me and Paul, that we'll be seeing, I have an electric bike myself. I've got, manual pedal bikes and electric. So it just depends on what people want to ride. And I see them being used more and more for people commuting and getting to work and things like that. Any more questions or?
I have a question. Commissioner McCarthy, I'm just wondering if there's been any precedence, if it's known in any municipalities about restricting speeds of electric bikes on non-road areas, if that's a thing yet, if anybody has paved the way to other communities.
So not, I don't know that they've been specific to e-bikes, but I know Seattle did a pilot program, oddly enough, actually allowing e-bikes on their trails, even though e-bikes had been on the trails before, but it wasn't really technically officially allowed. But they did that in concert with signing a 15-mile-an-hour speed limit on the signs and putting in educational signage, and they actually clarified which types of e-bikes are allowed. And I get them confused because they're not entirely logical, but there is one class of e-bike that is almost a motorcycle, and so those are still not allowed. But so yeah, Seattle has, I know, done it was right before the pandemic, so I don't know what became of it, but they did do a pilot program with that.
Thank you.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, that the class 3 bikes are not allowed on the trails.
I think it's the class 3. But
Yeah, and the class 2s don't allow electric power if they're over 21 miles an hour, which is kind of the speed a fast recreational non-e-biker would go. So it's not really a whole lot different. They probably go faster uphill, but on level and downhill, they'll be about the same speed as a fast regular rider.
That's good to know. Commissioner Westberg?
I just wanted to chime in and say that I support the recommendation for alternative A. I think providing a centralized node at that particular location will make it a very valuable addition to the trail. Also, there is a node there now, as you pointed out. It's just not formalized because people do gather there. They stop to grab a drink or a snack after coming across the bridge. They confer with their friends. They decide on the route they're going to take. But they do it by flopping in the grass on either side of the trail. So yeah, to provide some a more formal amenity there, assuming we can do it within the budget of the project, I think would be good. I don't like the multiple node option as much because I think it just gets a little busy and a little confusing. And I would also encourage that if we end up going with a single node, that we look at the possibility of using pervious surfacing at the node.
Great, thank you. Does anybody else have any comments or questions about this area? I agree with Commissioner Westberg. I also am for the one node. Commissioner Burstein?
I'm going to be a little bit of a contrarian here, and I'm not settled on which node is better, but I think the tendency of a group of bikers is going to be to find their own space. So if there's one central node and there are already people there, they're going to seek out another spot to stop and not congregate where there are others. So that would be my only concern of doing the one central one. And like I said, I'm not convinced either way. I'll have to think about it some more.
Okay.
Vice Chair Struck?
Yes, thank you, Peter Struck. Yeah, I would say I'm leaning towards the alternative A. I think the comment from Liz that it's a whole 5 to 8 bicycles, so it's I'm going to call it fairly small or within reason. I'll use that term. And I do think that having the 3, although I see Paul's point, it does get a little bit busy, and I think you could have potentially, if there's 3 bicyclists coming, and I just think of the speed issue more than anything. They're coming and they're saying, oh well, which one do we need to go to? Is it A, B, or C kind of thing? Where if there's just one, you kind of say, okay, well this is it. And I suspect more often than not, other than maybe on a couple sometimes during the weekends, that you're not going to have an issue of that central node being overflowing, I guess is the way to use it. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Birkenwald?
Yeah, I lean towards the one node as well. I guess if they were on one side of the trail, but the one thing you don't want is people crossing back and forth, obviously, with bikes coming by. So I think the one node seems like a better choice.
Great, thank you. All right, let's move on to our next section then, please.
Okay. So the next section is the trail connection under the 72nd Avenue Southeast overpass. It's kind of an interesting little intersection with the main trail going through and 2 connecting into it. I'm sure you're familiar with it. So again, we've got 2 different concepts going on. Sorry, I'm getting caught up with my cord here. The first of these would offer a more of a decorative concrete node with a mini roundabout, and we're going to show you some examples of that and talk about it as we move through this to explain what we mean by that and how it's been used in other locations. The other concept is a decorative node which has got a slightly bigger space but no mini roundabout, and we're actually realigning the trail from the parking lot a bit, and we got public feedback from that and some slightly different ideas from the original concept. But both of these concepts again offer the same kind of improvements, not necessarily where they're pointing to. We'd still have to we still have to look at how these get located, the sizes and that kind of thing. These are purely conceptual diagrams, but some kind of small seating node, which would be off the path, out of the way, to again allow people maybe to coming in from the parking lot to maybe sit down, or a kiosk for wayfinding. It may just be the kiosk for wayfinding and no sitting area, depending on how we feel about the conflicts and the traffic coming through here. So some wayfinding. Fong, can you go back to the previous one, or I may miss some of the, there we go, sorry. Wayfinding, vegetation management, both of the locations that we're pointing to have actually been addressed at this time. So there's sight distance issues coming up out of the parking lot and coming around that corner, that bend from the play field is very much improved without that higher hedge in there. So, and then moving on to the second slide here. We, as you can see, different shape for the alternative with what we're calling circulation mindset is to try and encourage people to actually do more of a roundabout that we're familiar with driving a car, go around one direction so that the traffic kind of comes together and circulates through in an easier fashion, and there's a little bit less conflict. The other one is more of a larger decorative plaza area, which would have either scoring or some coloring, and the same kind of thing is to try and get people to give them a heads up that they're coming to a place where they're going to run into some conflict, potentially with pedestrians, other bikers. Do something that says, hey, heads up, you're coming to more of a placemaking plaza area where you need to slow down. You're coming into another area where there's a high traffic play field, so there'd be more signage, striping, and that kind of thing. I'm going to turn it over to Fong for a bit, unless you have any questions. Sorry, Sarah, I see a hand up, so questions?
Oh, no, sorry, that was a mistake, sorry.
Okay. But if you do have questions, please let me know. Looks like
I have one. This is Commissioner Cohen. So just so high level, the one on the left, alternative A here, is a roundabout where you would try to get people to do what they try to get you to do in cars with roundabouts. This alternative B is just you continue through, but there are things to alert you to what's going on, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Yep.
We'll go into a little bit more what that roundabout could look like in a minute.
Yeah, and if it's helpful, I can jump into Google Earth so you can understand the context of the site a little bit more. We're dealing with a little bit topography change here. And so, as Liz said, our preference in this one is really leaning towards alternative A, and this is, let me just do that actually, just so you can get a little context.
This is Commissioner Westberg. I had one question before, excuse me for interrupting, but before you jump into that, and that is, did your design discussions consider the placement of signage or pavement paint or other types of messaging at the top of the hill before people start coming down and making that turn? Because where you need to alert people that they're entering a congested area is not the point where you're putting in the roundabout. It's the top of the hill, because once you start down that hill, you accelerate very quickly on a bicycle. Easily reaching speeds of 15 to 20 miles an hour unless you're actively braking. So I'd just like to know if there has been discussion or consideration of what's going to be placed at the top of the hill to alert people that they're entering a congested area.
Yeah,
yes, exactly. Right up at the top of that, where your pointer is.
It's actually a very good point, and we're not, and you do bring up a good point, is we're not, we haven't touched on the other kind of, well, I'm going to say minor improvement areas, but they're not minor in what result that they will have. They're just, we are looking at also all the way along the trail, looking at putting in more signage and striping exactly for what you're bringing up, is to give people a heads up and alert them. So thank you for bringing that up and pointing it out, is that as we move through the design process, we will also be adding that another layer to these improvement areas, which entails the entire trail of figuring out where to put more signage, telling people to slow down, giving them a heads up about conflict zones and that kind of thing. So Corinne, I didn't know whether you were going to add something to that or not.
No, you said exactly what I was going to say, which is that yes, that especially with the roundabout option, there would be a probably combination of pavement markings and advanced signage alerting people that a conflict zone is coming, and then with the corollary benefit that then if people get slowed down by that point, then they can't build up too much of a head of steam before they get to to the restroom area, which is generally even more congested. So yeah, we're definitely looking at the trail as a whole in that sense.
Yeah. Peter?
Yes, thank you, Peter Struck. Just staying on the roundabout concept for a second, I assume that other communities have used this bicycle roundabout concept. What have been the reductions in speed? I mean, again, I think of basically, you have a pedestrian that's walking, call it 3 miles an hour. If you've got a bicyclist coming down 15, 20, 25 miles an hour, it's, a factor of 5 to 10 times. I mean, that's a pretty big differential. So I'm curious what this roundabout concept would ideally do, I guess.
Yeah, Fung, do you mind skipping forward to those example images we had? I think it's a couple slides forward. So I haven't seen any studies specifically related to speed, but there's definitely been some recent local examples, and I apologize, the images are a bit small here, but Olympia just introduced their first bike roundabout, which is that top left image there. And it's at the intersection of 2 fairly significant shared use trails. They did a kind of stamped concrete domed apron, and then there's a plinth in the middle that now has a very large luminaire on it. And then directly below that is a kind of small, just decorative pavement roundabout that Portland implemented in one of at an intersection of 2 pretty high traffic bikeways. So not necessarily a pedestrian shared space, just a bicycle space. And then you can see the top right there, there's examples that are planted or or seeded with the goal being that it would still be a recoverable surface. So if somebody has missed the signage, they've missed the pavement markings, they've failed to yield, maybe their bike doesn't have brakes, that, there wouldn't be a physical impediment that they would hit, so they could, roll through the shrubs or the grass. And then on the bottom right, there is just kind of more decorative pavement. But, the idea is that you're forcing people to acknowledge who's already in that space and look for cross traffic. So no one direction of traffic. Right now you have a very predominant flow from up by the courts to the restroom with kind of a more minor Y, and then the access to the parking lot. And so the idea would be that all traffic yields, through pavement markings to get people to look at who else might be there, and get them to play nicely and just acknowledge each other. So if with a physical, like raised decorative pavement, or the vegetated version, you have something that people physically have to go around, and that definitely would force a reduction of speed depending on how tight the turn is and things like that. But the goal is really to get people to notice each other and make that intersection and crossing safer. So
Thank you.
Paul, did you have a question?
Yes, this is Commissioner Bursing. The top left, which is the new Olympia trail, I believe, is that a bike only path or a shared path?
that is it's 2 shared use paths, so 2 regional trails.
So it's bikes and pedestrians.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
And I would actually be interested to see what pedestrians are naturally doing through that area relative to specifically turning left, or just in general. We had a discussion during the open house of, do people, turn short to make a left, they go around to make a left? How do pedestrians interact? And that's that's something we'll definitely look into of how that interaction happens on these shared use roundabouts.
For me, that's key. So if you're a pedestrian coming off the parking lot and you're going towards the restrooms, I can't imagine a pedestrian going around the circle to get over there. And similarly, if I unloaded my bike coming from the parking lot and I was heading down that trail, I don't know if I would necessarily go around a roundabout. When you're continuing on, coming in from the main pathway, going and continuing, it is a natural kind of jog around, but not being cars. I think the tendency, particularly for pedestrians, would be the shortest path, and a lot of bikers would probably do the same. I mean, my experience on my bike is pedestrians completely ignore markings and paths. So if you go to Alki Beach and you go on the bike only and it's well marked and separated, and there are a lot of bikes on there, there are also a lot of pedestrians that just walk on that path, where I rarely see any bikes on the pedestrian only path. And the same thing is true in various areas of the Burke-Gilman Trail that are separated. Pedestrians normally just go where they think they want to walk.
Mm-hmm. You're keying up our next section on the restroom area. I appreciate
Okay.
that.
Sure.
We're going to go into that
So glad I could help.
in depth, but yeah, I agree. You know, I think people might treat it more like people treat the traffic circles in you know, Seattle neighborhoods where you know, most everybody turns short, and so yeah, we would have to definitely look at how we want people to use it, but then actually how they would use it, because like you said, people tend to take the path of least resistance, and so that's a big consideration.
Looks like Commissioner Westberg, you had a question.
Yes, thank you very much. This is Commissioner Westberg. There was public comment on Let's Talk and I believe on the survey about eliminating that short piece of trail that comes out of the parking lot. And has that idea been given consideration from a design perspective?
Well, well, since it came up, it has been, and that's what we'd like to look at. And we were kind of throwing it out to the commission to discuss and see whether that's feasible, whether that's something, you know, we would move forward with looking at it if we thought that there's some things to look at, you know, the access coming in and out of the parking lot, what it does if we take it away. And so it's worthwhile giving an overview and looking at to see if it would actually be feasible.
Well, because there's an alternative for people who park in that lot to get to the restrooms. There's another access that's more direct. So this one I would think largely serves people that want to walk, just access to the trail for walking, or it's the closest trail to the backstop area.
Correct, yeah. And it's not particularly ADA accessible because it's quite steep. It drops off pretty quickly down to the parking lot too.
Yeah, well, I would personally encourage that be explored as a possibility.
Okay. Commissioner Cohen, I think you were next.
Yes, Don Cohen. Two things on Commissioner Westberg's comment on that on the access from the parking lot. Even though it's not maybe possible to make it ADA accessible, I don't know whether this is true, but isn't that a place where somebody who is elderly or with some, you know, lesser medical or physical challenge would likely park to then enter the whole system here to walk? I guess that's my wonder about the idea of eliminating that access. And then my second comment has to do with the roundabout idea. I don't know about anybody else, but I can't think of anybody that I know of anywhere who, whether for automobiles or otherwise, says anything good about roundabouts. All right, not whether or not they're good or not, they don't seem to be good from a public relations point of view. At least that's in my limited experience. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Struck.
Yes, Peter Struck. Yeah, when I walked this area yesterday, I had the exact same comment or thought that Commissioner Westberg we had about the access to the parking lot. Well, couldn't you just close that off and there is another way and so forth? But then I think I kind of stopped and said, well, wait a minute. And I kind of what Commissioner Bernstein said, unless you're going to put a fence or shrubbery up there to completely close it off, if it's just going to be grass or whatever, people are, again, we'll just use the shortest path and we'll still use it. So I like the concept, but I think that you're going to have to design it such that it basically it's totally blocked off to effectively seal it.
We're looking at using, and you'll see in the next section, one of the ideas was to use kind of a low informal fencing along the ball fields to make sure that people are, entering the trail at predictable spaces. And so that might be an application for that as well on that end of the parking lot to corral people. But yeah, it's a good point about if that's actually the easiest way to get from your car onto the trail if you have mobility challenges, and that would be definitely something to consider.
I think it would depend on where the accessible stalls are located in the parking lot.
Yeah.
I don't recall where they are, but I would think they would be closer to the restroom, but I could be wrong.
They are. They're closer to the restroom.
Okay. A couple more questions, and then we should probably just give you an overview of the public involvement, which was on the next slide. We've talked about some of it, but kind of wanted to finish up. But I see we have two more hands up.
Well, maybe, sorry.
No, go ahead. I was going to ask you.
Commissioner Markson, were you saying that you have survey results on these A and B?
We do, yes.
Oh, okay, well, I'd like to hear that maybe before I give my.
Okay, there was another hand up, but I think Commissioner Bachman put her hand down. So Fong, would you like to just go through real quickly, touch on the highlights of this and then?
Sure. I think we've already kind of went through, the possibility of eliminating that path to the parking lot. And then everyone just acknowledged that, yeah, this whole area needs to have some kind of traffic calming element to really work around with different speeds and user types going through this mixing zone. In general, for the comments, in the polling, if you add the polling and the survey together, a lot of people are leaning towards alternative A. I mean, it is kind of close in this regard, but I think as we talked it through internally, looking at some of the feedback, we also prefer alternative A as well for the reasons that it does encourage that short turn, kind of turning short. It slows the bikers down, especially when they're approaching that restroom facility area. And for that, yeah, and it just also, I mean, both improves sightline as far as vegetation management, as well as striping along the trail to get to that point. Now that the option of actually removing that access is on the table a little bit, that kind of, I personally now I'm starting to like teeter on B because of that. So I don't know about you and Corinne and Liz and Paul, what you think, but if that's on the table, that's something else that we have to kind of relook at again, design-wise. Is that fair to say? Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. If it becomes a Y intersection, that's a different.
Yep.
So that's that. Liz, did you want to go through the matrix more?
Yeah, really quickly. We've looked at the photographs that, giving you an idea of what that roundabout would look like. Both of these, like I said, both options provide equally improvements across the board. Additional trails striping, again, would improve the accessibility and safety. Expanding the pavement in high traffic areas, that improves the capacity, safety, and allows for some aesthetic treatment. And if we did take out that side trail, I think it would allow for a really nice little area that we could put a kiosk and some wayfinding, and that potentially could help with that. People cutting up there, like Corinne said, some kind of minimal fencing or something. Reestablishing the 2-foot shoulders along the trail. This is one area where it's become particularly overgrown, so that should definitely help. There is, going back to the pavement in the high traffic areas on the west, I think it's the southwest corner as you cut up towards the other trail option towards downtown. There's a lot of area that's been worn out in the planting area that looks like, people just cut through anyway. So that is an area that we could expand the pavement slightly. Providing defined amenities at nodes, which we've talked about, that helps with capacity, safety, and again, anesthetic treatment, improved wayfinding signage, additional signage for lower speed control, helps with safety, and that would be slow down, you're coming to a mixing zone, and all the rest of the things that we've been talking about. And then which includes improving pedestrian and bicyclist traffic control devices. So you can see how the improvements we're talking about are going to cover quite a few things in all 4 of those categories. So opening this up again, we don't have a whole lot of time, so I'm wondering at this point if, I don't know, do you guys normally go over time? Is that okay? Or should we talk about this and then hold off on the 3rd option and come back to the commission with that? I'm not quite sure how that works, but.
This is a really fast meeting for us, Liz. So
okay,
we will give you a little bit more time. And Commissioner Markson, what is your comment?
Okay, thanks for going through the public input. That was helpful. I guess the one thing I didn't really hear it with the roundabout idea, especially a roundabout with like anything raised in the center. It seems like it's introducing its own safety problems, especially in an area where there's a fair amount going on already, or where like we have such dark, commuters are going through in the dark. Like definitely need to have something highly visible. So I don't know, in my opinion, having something that's just maybe patched pavement or bright colored pavement seems safer than having something that someone could literally run into, or a little kid can run into if they're coming through that intersection. But
yeah,
I could, yeah.
That was something that came up in the public feedback on the survey, as well as during the open house. And I think everybody agreed that having any sort of physical object, art, a sign, a light, anything like that would be kind of a non-starter for the reasons you just mentioned, and also because it makes it harder to see somebody who's coming from across the roundabout, right? It's just a sight impediment. So I think anything we would look at would be, you'd be able to, in a pinch, ride over it safely. So even if it was raised, it'd be, not curbed, but maybe sloped, mounded.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's a very good point.
And I think Corinne brought up previously showing one example where if we could make it a recoverable surface that was just a soft surface, like maybe it's just grass or ground cover or something like that. But that one in the top right there, nice bright white edge to it, so it really pops out view wise. That could be some kind of glow in the dark paint or something, so you really get an idea. In fact, we've been talking about that, and was one of the examples that we used in the online survey and in our presentation before, was to provide something, a nighttime thing that really made some of the pavement markings pop out and make you much more aware of where you're coming to. Let's see, Commissioner Strutt.
Thank you, Peter Struck. 2 quick points. So maybe this is for Paul, but in terms of the wayfinding signage, will the signage be kind of consistent with other wayfinding signages on the island?
That's what we've talked about.
Okay.
As the discussions we've had so far is that the city's desire is to continue the green pennant style wayfinding signage, but there may be, that's still, I think that's still an open question.
Okay. Well, my initial reaction, I think I'd prefer consistency, but that's probably a discussion for another time. And then the second point would be, I just thought of this when we're looking at the slide 2 back where you show the 2 alternatives. Thank you. I had a concern about the kiosk where it is, is that would be a place to congregate, and you would be, generating more congestion there kind of artificially, if you will. But then I thought if you were to close off that parking lot access road, you could move the kiosk, and maybe move it half the way back, and then you could have the fence behind it or something like that to kind of kind of get it off the main thoroughfare, so to speak. So just a thought. Thank you.
And that's very good observation, because that had been brought up, and once we work through this and decide how the pieces all come together, definitely I think that needs adjusting so that there's more space for people if they need to stand there and look at the kiosk. So
Okay, last comment, Paul.
Just a quick question. Is it possible to put in some type of groove payment as you approach that intersection, forcing particularly bikers to pay a little more attention to the road and what's ahead?
Corinne, you want to answer that one?
Yeah, I think very commonly they use kind of channelization bars of, white channelization thermoplastic across that get closer together as you approach. That's pretty common for like crosswalks that go across cycle tracks and trails and things like that. So that's definitely a language that cyclists are familiar with at this point, and it does actually have a little bit of a tactile ba-bum ba-bum as you go over it. So that's definitely something we look at. But then also, that change in pavement from asphalt to concrete also kind of changes people's mindset, right? The skinny ribbon of asphalt feels like this is my space and I can just go, and changing that surface to like a decorative concrete or something like that generally tends to make people think they're not in just a bike space anymore. So I think that also plays into it and makes it more visible too. So
Great, thanks.
Let's move on to the next. Thank you.
Okay. So the next one is last but definitely not least, probably the more complicated area because of all the interest in it and the activities that are going on. There's a restroom, ball field, the parking lot's coming in. There's a slope trail, as you could definitely see dropping off to the east there. There's another connecting trail up to the north side of the restroom. So again, there's two concepts for this. Both of they're a little bit different. One has a separated concrete sidewalk, and the other shows a wider trail, but still one trail for multi-use pedestrians and bicyclists. Both of the concepts include some kind of decorative concrete plaza treatment in front of the restroom, and then either removing or moving some of the amenities that are kind of in the way of people congregating there and giving them a little bit more space. Providing an amenity zone is showing, and as Corinne touched on before, providing some kind of informal fencing to help direct the traffic and people crossing back and forth through the trail, which has been quite well received. So if we'll go on to the next one that shows the bigger picture, as you can see here, the one on the left is it provides one larger plaza by the restroom, and then a smaller one is the connecting to the parking lot. It redirects the pedestrians and the people using the dugout area and the ball fields slightly around and into that plaza area, so to try and stop people from doing that cross traffic thing that's hard for bicyclists to react to. And then you can kind of see on that blow up, there's some little dashed lines along the edges, which are meant to represent a split rail or some kind of informal fencing, which would help kind of channel people through. The alternative B shows 3 different size plaza areas, but connecting to them is a separate pedestrian path. So if you're coming out of the dugout or the ball field area, you have an opportunity to cross over there. It gives the bike people a heads up where that node is. Like Kareem was talking about, different kind of paving treatment material. And then once you get across, you can walk all the way through to the restroom. So that pathway would be maybe ADA accessible, so 5 feet wide at the minimum. And then the trail remains the same size as it is, with a soft surface or shoulder on either side of it. The alternative A, the width that we're talking about increasing it, includes paving the shoulders, so it gives an impression of the trail being wider and a little bit more spacious for both pedestrian and bike people to go through to connect that node area. So questions on this. So this is the one that I'll let Fong go into the public involvement feedback and the survey a bit, but we are leaning towards alternative A with the bigger node areas and the wider connecting trail. You'll see in the matrix and the results that came back, it slightly leaned more towards alternative B, but we have some fairly, we'll give you some feedback and talk through why we're kind of leaning the other way than what the public came back with. So.
Yeah, in conversation during the open house, it sounded like a lot of people were really liking alternative B. In theory, it's a great idea, but then looking at a lot of the conversations that was happening on Let's Talk, people also acknowledge that people are people, bikers are bikers, and we're going to go wherever we want to go. So in reality, maybe A is actually probably a little better. But again, ultimately, everyone did like the informal fencing, so that was a common thread between both alternatives, is that, as well as having that immediate kind of right turn from the trail coming into this plaza space. Both of them kind of have that ability to create a more expanded space, and especially in front of the restroom. And so everyone liked that as well. I think that this was interesting when we kind of switched the configuration here at the dugout. A lot of people mentioned they also kind of like that configuration a little more because it kind of worked with this. But again, let me just go through. You can read some of the comments, and then obviously the summary also provides a more in-depth explanation of them. So at first glance, a lot of people really like their own space, want their own delineated path. They have this perceived notion of having their own path, and then that creates more space for them and everyone else. But like I said, through the Let's Talk and even some of the discussion thereafter internally with staff is that, to minimize a lot of points of conflicts is really alternative A, because you're really allowing everyone to go in that space. When you have the trails separated, that actually creates a little more confusion, and also creates clutter as well, because wayfinding is necessary to tell people you need to be here and you need to be there. So there's gonna be definitely more clutter with alternative B, definitely more maintenance because of some of the signage, as well as that separated landscape buffer that would require maintenance as well, and upkeep. Over time, that would be trampled over, people crisscrossing, dogs hopping back and forth. So that's something that we talked more in depth after looking at the feedback. And that was our conclusion. But yes, we're gonna just leave it up for discussion because we want to hear everyone's opinion as to which one you prefer.
And then Corinne, did you want to add anything to just basically talking a bit more about the bike traffic and the way that we've organize those spaces? I'm not sure whether I covered everything, but
Sure. I think that between some of the things that were actually brought up in the discussion about the previous area and what was just said, I think that kind of covers it all. But Fung, if you can jump back to this. So again, I think it's just the idea of changing people's mindset from trail to shared space where you have to be more aware of the people around you, and that they may not just be traveling in the same direction as you. They may be crossing the trail, they may be entering the trail. And from that perspective, we felt like alternative A was simpler, would operate more smoothly, versus B with people trying to, some people trying to get themselves on the pedestrian only path, and some people saying, I'm just going to walk on the trail because it's a shared trail and they are legally allowed to use that shared space. So it could create some different expectations of who thinks who should be where, and then again also forcing people to cross the trail. We did look at bringing that pathway to the ballpark side, but then that pushes all the crossing. So if somebody's going to the restrooms, it pushes all of that to that tight corner at the the southeast corner of the restroom there. And we felt that was actually a less desirable place to have everybody intersecting. And so if we were to do the separated path, we felt it'd be better if people could cross over at different locations and kind of spread that out a bit. But
good. Questions, Jody?
Thank you. Yeah, Commissioner McCarthy. I personally like the idea of A. I feel like it takes some understanding to know what's going on. And I really feel that people being people, they are not going to take the time to cross over from the ball fields across the bike path and then walk on it. The other thing is what's in between the bike path and the pedestrian path, and what kind of maintenance is that going to need? Is it, is it going to be high maintenance? And that just seems like one more maintenance thing, operations thing that we're adding into it. That's my 2 cents. Thanks.
Commissioner Westberg, I think you're next on the list.
Thank you. This is Commissioner Westberg. Yes, I'm just going to throw a few comments in support of alternative A as well. I think building a separate 5-foot wide trail in that area would be a very tough sell, particularly given a lot of the discussion that took place during the master planning process relating to a separate bike trail that would have in fact gone around the back side of the restrooms. In my opinion, alternative A also sits better on the landscape. There's less impact on the playing fields and on the addition of impervious surface. I think the way the connection from the dugout to the mixing area is very clever and works really well. And if we're successful at the roundabout area in slowing down bike traffic heading east, then the mixing here shouldn't be a problem. Because bikes will already have been slowed down, not to a walking speed, because you can't stay upright on a bike at 3 miles an hour, but they'll be slow enough that to avoid, I think, to avoid unpleasant interactions with pedestrians and dogs that would be using that same area. So I definitely like A better.
Commissioner Struck.
Yes, thank you, Peter Struck. I would just echo the sentiments of the 2 previous commissioners on alternative A. My kind of additional comment was really, I think of kind of the Burke-Gilman in the UW campus area that does have that kind of separated pedestrian area, and we talked about it earlier. But and I try to use that quite a bit. But this area, it's so short that if I was at the ball field, I probably most of the time would not, make a conscious effort to cross over to that separate pedestrian walkway. I think it's, as somebody said before, people will do what they're going to do, and I just think that it will not be very effective in the grand scheme of things, and plus all the other issues that Jody and Rory brought up. So I'm also in favor of A.
Okay. Commissioner Cohen.
Don Cohen, I prefer A. No additional
Super.
comments.
We thought this was going to be the hardest one, you guys, but you're stepping up to the plate and that's great. Thank you. Any other questions? Not seeing any.
I have a quick one if I can squeeze in, Councilmember Reynolds. Interestingly, not that I get a vote here, but I had favored B before, but I've become convinced by A. But this is the area that is most critical, in my view, for slowing down traffic, coming as it does at the bottom of a hill. You have, and sorry if I missed this, but you're drawing the decorative nodes or roundabouts, whatever the term is. Could we put a true roundabout in this area? Did you just consider that? Because it seems like doing that, especially where the trails intersect there towards the parking lot, would be a more effective means of slowing traffic.
We did not consider that. I think maybe partly because we were trying to keep pavement to expanding the pavement area to somewhat of a, minimize that. The second concept obviously increases the pavement probably more than the first concept, but I think we just didn't really consider it because it had come up for the other intersection underneath the overpass and then wasn't really brought up for the second one by the public, but.
Because they don't need to be consistent, do they? Could the other one be a painted one and this one be a physical one?
I am not, Corinne, what do you think about that? I think there's been a lot of concern about actually having a raised roundabout or anything like that, that people could accidentally ride up over or something like that. So that would be my concern with that one.
I think there is like a value in, you know, having like establishing some kind of consistent visual language that people can get in that mindset and then understand how the trail is functioning moving forward. I think, you know, you could do a roundabout treatment at the parking area and dugout intersection there, but like Liz mentioned, in order to get that space, you know, around that center island, you would be bumping out into that field area, which we know is a very sensitive topic, and I think people kind of generally want to avoid that. And then somebody brought up during the open house a good point that I think from that underpass area, it does actually climb a bit to the restrooms, and it's climbing from the other side. So, you know, if we can successfully get people down to a more reasonable speed at that underpass area, they don't have much of a chance to build up that head of steam before they get to the restrooms. And one other thing I don't think we pointed out that both of these concepts do is coming in from the east. Currently, you have this kind of smooth arc of trail that comes past the restrooms that encourage you just come up over the hill, and now you can start rolling down. And so we've tried to, without actually really moving the trail, create the feeling that you're actually coming up and you're making a left turn, right? Which when you're making a turn, you tend to look around, see your surroundings a bit more than just thinking, well, this is my path, and it continues smoothly and off I go. And the same thing coming in the other direction. So if you're heading eastbound, you're coming past the restroom, it feels like you're turning right to stay on the trail, which again, just is a slower movement, a more deliberate movement than a smooth arc. So that's one thing I think that in both of these concepts will help. And then again, just that change in pavement type, that change in mindset of trail versus shared mixing space. So.
Judy.
Thank you. When I was looking at it, and this is jumping just a little bit ahead, but I was just thinking, it suddenly looks like a stream to me. And so perhaps if we had like salmon showing you the way that you're supposed to go, stamped into the pavement or something like that, that could be a really cool way to have, an artistic detail in there that's Pacific Northwest and is still directional for people.
What about snails?
I also like snails, but yeah.
I vote for the snails.
I'm holding up for banana slugs.
That sounds slippery though. Like the snails.
Anyways, I know that we're not quite there yet, but I thought that's something that could be interesting, is using something stamped in to show people where they want to go.
Yeah, I definitely agree. That would be a good use of the decorative element.
Yeah, and that's one of the kind of light touch placemaking and also kind of safety and informational improvements we're looking at for project wide along the trail, is things that we could do, in the pavement, both whimsical things like directional salmon, which I love. I love that idea. And also things that are informative, all of that kind of comes together to make people feel like they're in a park and not just on a trail. And again, the more we can get that across, I think the more people will respond by behaving more park-like.
Okay.
Commissioner
Any
West.
Who was that? This is Commissioner Westberg. I just had one final question overall about arriving at a 30% design concept. We have quite appropriately focused on these three priority areas that you identified in an early slide, but there were other non-priority areas.
Yeah. That's
And will the 30% design kind of address what the elements are that are going to go into those areas? I assume it would be painting, signage, whatever, but
yes.
I just wasn't quite sure what happened in those places.
No, definitely. In fact, you've jumped to this, basically to this slide here where we're talking about, so the list on the right is all the improvements that could happen between, point A and point B in our project area. We've highlighted the areas that are a higher priority that we've talked about, backing off to lower priority, meaning not that that it doesn't need doing, but if depending on funding and how much, what elements go in the other area, the whole trail is going to receive at least like signage and pavement markings. That's pretty easy to do and not super expensive. Restoring the trail shoulders, a little bit more problematic in some of the lower priority areas because it's quite a bit of work to do that, and there's a lot of vegetation that will require removing some of the subgrade and restoring it. So we may focus that on more important high priority areas to give people areas to get on and off the trail in those locations. But the rest of these definitely in 30% we will highlight, we'll go through and show specifically where we might put signage, where we're going to put pavement markings and that kind of thing. Yes.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions? I was just stepping back to the second one. So it sounded like we were kind of on the fence between the two of them, the roundabout and the open paved area. And it might depend on whether we can look at removing that, not that one, Fong, the middle, the underpass area. That was the one that I didn't hear a definitive one way or the other, how people felt on them, on these two alternatives, but it may depend on whether we look at the connection from the park, removing that connection from the parking lot or not. If we did that, it sounded like people were in favor of maybe just the bigger paved area with a kiosk and that kind of thing, rather than doing the roundabout. But I'm not totally sure if anybody have additional thoughts on that.
Yeah, this is Chair McCarthy. I really loved Vice Chair Strzok's idea about blocking the access, potentially blocking access to the parking lot and putting the kiosk in there, and it provides a little nook for people to get off of the trail and be out of the way and give that information, and also discourages people from trying to use that access anyway. I feel like if we did that having it, you wouldn't need to have the roundabout anymore. It would make more sense, I think, for people coming down and seeing the orientation of things, and that there was only, you could either go straight through or you can turn one way. So the roundabout isn't as needed, in my opinion. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Cohen, did you have a question?
Yes, Don Cohen. If the connection to the parking lot is a significant driver on this one, I know you showed us a comment from some member of the public coming up with the idea of closing that down. Has that concept received sufficient public vetting from whoever it might be, the senior citizen group, the whoever it is? Or is that a newer concept?
It's a fairly newer concept that, like we're working through it right now. And I agree with you. And Paul, maybe you have an input on this, that if we did go that direction, we may have to do just like another single round of just get some public feedback on that, or look into it a little bit more. I'm not really sure. I'm just talking through that one.
Yeah, I think more than more public feedback on that, I think we need to confer with WashDOT. And maybe I think instead of general public feedback, it would be more like talking to the ball field users who, I mean, they're already limited ways to get from the parking lot to the ball field. What would we do for access to the ball field from the parking lot if that trail's not there? So those are the issues that I see needing to be addressed.
Okay.
This Don Cohen, just to follow up, one of my concerns would be that if the next stage is the 30% design and it comes out with this suggestion about eliminating that connection, and there hasn't yet been whatever additional public feedback, whether it's ball field users or walkers desiring as easy access from the parking lot as possible, or whatever it is, then there's going to be some resistance, perhaps legitimate.
This is Commissioner Westberg. So I like alternative A in this one. And, I agree with the discussions we've had about trying to move a kiosk. I see this intersection as really critical to the whole task or the whole objective of trying to slow down cyclists as they come down that hill. So I think we're going to need something here that would do that. Not something that would create a safety hazard, but something that would definitely signal that their speed needs to be cut as they enter into the mixing area around the restroom. So I'd be, and I wouldn't, that to me is the primary function, would be the primary function of this intersection. I wouldn't clutter it up with a kiosk, or I wouldn't clutter it up with seating. I would keep it as free and open as possible for both pedestrians and bikes to mix in this area, but with the overall objective of trying to slow down cyclists before they reach the busier mixing area.
Hi, Vice Chair Struck. I'll just echo what Rory said. My number one objective or / concern is kind of the safety and the flowing of bicycles, but making sure that it's safe for them as well. And and again, I haven't really seen any data one way or the other to say, well, this is better than the other. But so I would just go with, I think I kind of lean to A as well. But if there was data available would say that B was really much better, then I would go with that. But that's my number one concern. And I agree that if the parking lot driveway entranceway has to stay for whatever reason, I think moving the kiosk off of that area probably makes sense, and relocating it somewhere where it's probably well, it is more safer. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Moxon.
I'll be really fast. I agree with what Commissioner Westberg was saying about, I think A is great, as long as it's not that raised thing that we were talking about. I think moving the kiosk makes sense. I think that leaving that walkway is important. I guess every time I've been there, I've probably used that walkway, especially with all the baseball games that I've been to in that area. So anyway, but generally supporting everything that Commissioner Westberg.
Okay. Commissioner Bernstein, it looks like you have your hand up too.
Yeah, and I'll just add an affirmative to Plan A. Even with pedestrians going wherever they want to, if that's a known congestion area, like other areas that I bike in, that's an area that you have to slow down because you don't know what's coming from what side. And I think the roundabout will slow traffic.
Okay.
Oh, just one more thing. I just want to point out to Commissioner Cohen, I love roundabouts. So here's a person you know that does love roundabouts.
Okay. On that note, is there any other comments on that? I think that gives us a little bit more direction, which is kind of what I was looking for. So that's great. Anybody else? Okay. Commissioner McCarthy, I'd hand it back over to you. I think we've wrapped it up. We finished on our last one, which was talking about the levels of improvement. So we've already talked about that, and that was pretty much questions we've already answered. That thank you very much for taking your time to listen to everything tonight, and excellent feedback. I think that we can move forward with developing the 30% plans, and you'll definitely see another version and another round of this once we get to that point. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for presenting.
You're welcome.
All right, our third item of regular business is the King County Library System presentation review, and we're going to go back to Recreation Manager Ryan Daly.
Good evening, commissioners. Again, I was enthralled with the conversation around banana slugs earlier. That was didn't see that one coming. So banana slugs, snails, and salmon. Excellent job. But we are here to talk about KCLS and review the presentation that was provided to us at the last meeting on March 3rd. So I will be handing it back over to you, Chair McCarthy, so that the commission can discuss what the outcomes they felt that presentation provided, as well as what next steps, or I should say next questions the commission would like staff to go and solicit from KCLS. So with that, I will hand it over to you. And actually, just one more thing was, we did provide a list of sort of sample questions that Vice Chair Struck had created, and those were sent out to the Parks Commission as well, just for a bit of a sample or an example of what we may look toward requesting from KCLS. So with that, I will actually hand it back to you, Chair McCarthy.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I will say I really found Peter's questions that he made up to be really helpful. And I really like his thoughtfulness at looking at the numbers. So I'm going to pass it over to Vice Chair Struck.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so what I tried to do after the presentation, and we got that information on library usage, a week or two weeks later from KCLS, and I looked at that, and what I guess shocked me a little bit, or surprised me, not shocked me, surprised me, was the decline in usage, and this is 2018 to 20. And so that kind of, if Ryan told us that, community center activity from 2018 to 20, was down 18% or whatever the right number is, I think we'd probably be having a bigger discussion. So the questions on the data usage and so forth, they're just trying to get our hands, or at least I was trying to get a hands around, what's really happening. Are we different than other locations, et cetera, et cetera? Specifically, how do they measure the data? I guess, again, is it, well, you just walk through the door, or do you check out a book, or do you, access a computer? How do you do that? How do they just even collect the data? And then, have they started recollecting data since they reopened last summer? Again, I don't know, just questions. Clearly looking at the usage pattern by day, and again, I know some of our questions last time were on, Saturday versus Sunday. And it looks like, Saturday usage has been going up and Sunday's been going down. So you kind of scratch your head and say, well, maybe wouldn't it be better to be open on Saturday? And then, just kind of trying to understand better, because I know that, and again, at the city level, there's a lot of discussion about public engagement and helping, having the public inform, city leaders, Parks Commission, and so forth, what are they thinking about various issues? I'm not aware of any outreach that KCLS does. And I've talked to a couple of people that are fairly close to it and they're not either. So I think, asking about, how do they solicit feedback and so forth, and getting some kind of trying to peel back the onion a little bit, I think would be helpful. And I kind of view this as a longer process than this is just kind of the start of trying to better understand how does the community, value the library and, what are the trends? So that's kind of what I came up with. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any comments about that or questions they'd like to add to the list? Roy, I'm going to jump over to Commissioner Birkenwald ahead of you. Thank you.
No problem.
Well, I was on the library board before the Parks and Rec Commission, and I think in terms of soliciting feedback, I think that's our job now is to be connecting with the community. But I was just wanted to comment on the usage. The library has restricted the hours so drastically now. And so I just wanted to make sure you're all aware of that, right? That's a big problem, is that it's just not open. And so that's, I think, the reflective in the fact that usage is down because it's not open most of the time. Anyway, that's my comments. Thanks.
Yeah, this is Vice Chair Struck. If I could just comment, this is data pre-pandemic. So I agree 100% that, with restricted hours and so forth, and that's one of the questions. Well, what does it look like today? But the data they provided was pre-pandemic, so it should be fairly consistent in terms of the hours hadn't changed yet, et cetera, et cetera.
Sarah, do you have a follow-up to that?
Oh, I didn't realize that. No, that's fine. Thank you for clarifying that.
Okay, Commissioner Westberg.
I just wanted to thank Peter for the analysis he did on the data and say that I certainly agree with pursuing some additional clarifications, particularly along the lines of whether or not they're collecting data now and how that may compare even with reduced hours to what existed pre-pandemic. But I also, just looking at walk-in usage data is only going to tell us part of the story, because during the pandemic, we all made adjustments to, how we did things, how we shopped, how we ordered, how we ate in restaurants, and certainly how we interacted with the library, doing more things online and, through their pickup service and that sort of thing. So if you want to get a whole picture of how the library is operating, you'd need to look, I think, at that other aspect of it to see whether or not, if there's a decline in walk-in traffic, whether it's been made up for in online and other uses that are, and I don't know how you get that. Is it through circulation, looking at, interactions with the public with the library in whatever forum or by whatever means? So just to add that point, and then maybe to plant a seed. I know that a number of our speakers, public speakers, bemoan the loss of the library board. And so just to plant the seed, maybe this group going forward should consider creating a subcommittee, which we can do under our bylaws, that would be specific to the library and create a means of having a regular basis of communication with the library system.
Thank you, Commissioner Westberg. Commissioner Burstein.
This is Paul Burstein. Things are changing, and just like our own community center continues to expand hours and access, I'd be very curious what the library system plan is for opening and their timeline, and if they've thought about it in terms of milestones. So by a certain date, we will expand this many hours, or is it just an all or nothing proposition where they'll notify us at some point later saying, okay, we're going to be back to the hours we had before? I mean, that's the big unknown in my mind. is what's their plan moving forward and the timeline?
Yep, that's a good question. Commissioner Birkenwald?
I would just say Commissioner Westberg's idea of having the subcommittee is a good idea. I know there's tons, I remember from being on the library board, the library has so much data and so much information, and they really do have it kind of at their fingertips. So I just remember we could ask them any question and they would come back at the next meeting and just have data and charts, and they have lots of people to help with our understanding. So if people really have an interest, I know the library would be willing to do it, easily.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that information. Commissioner Struck?
Yeah, thank you. Just a couple comments. Yeah, I think I agree 100% with Rory or Commissioner Westberg regarding online usage versus in-person, et cetera, to try to understand, what is that dynamic and, how are they measuring that and so forth. And same thing with Commissioner Bernstein. Yeah, when the last meeting, when the director was there, I did ask basically the question you asked about, well, what are your milestones, or what does the future look like? What is your plan? And they didn't really answer it. So I think, going back and saying, could you provide some, what do you expect? I mean, we obviously, we can't hold you to it, but what is the expectation? So I think that's a good question as well. And I do like the library subcommittee. I think that would be put a good focus on it.
Yeah, thank you. I agree. I think having a library subcommittee sounds like a really good idea. Does anybody else have any comments? Commissioner Markson?
Yeah, I guess maybe just adding some support to what was said by both Commissioner Struck and Commissioner Westberg. I guess what I found a little, or I couldn't suss out from the presentation was, we know that the library's not open more, but we don't know when they're going to do it. They seem to imply that they didn't have funding to do it, but they didn't know if they would ask for more funding. And it just seems like it was kind of like a chicken and egg. Well, we don't have enough people to warrant the funding, but I don't know. Anyway, I felt like the information was maybe, I wish I had put questions together before this meeting. I like Commissioner Struck's questions, and I will certainly put some thought into some more, but it felt a little bit unsatisfactory, though they clearly were trying to support, the library, but it seemed like additional questions would certainly be warranted, and probably a library subcommittee that could really focus on those questions is a good idea.
Thank you. Yeah, I think you had a really great question in there, which is, if you can't go back to full hours, what's limiting you to being able to offer that? Would be a question that we could ask. Yeah, if they don't have a timeline, what is holding you back? Any other comments? All right, then Rory has the last comment.
Sorry about that. Well, with regard to a library subcommittee, I said I wanted to plant a seed. I don't think we're ready to make a motion and vote on that yet. And so I'd like to suggest that maybe that go on the agenda for our May meeting, if our May meeting, we'd have time to do that. And in the meantime, maybe Ryan could unearth some of the information about the old library, the former library board, and share with the group, so that we could kind of get a sense of what the library board did and whether those are similar things that we'd want to charge a subcommittee to do, and be thinking about who might be on it. We could incorporate members of the public. It doesn't have to be entirely from the commission. So just I think there's more discussion there, but if there's a general sense that that's a good way to go, then we should work that discussion in to a future meeting.
Yep. I agree.
Sorry, Chair,
Go
if I could jump in. I feel like I got good consensus on questions to move forward with, to get additional information from from KCLS, and then adding the additional item on potentially on the May meeting to discuss a subcommittee. I think that's a real possibility, and I can work with PRC leadership on getting that on the agenda.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, we're going to go to our fourth item of business, and that is the 2022 planning and meeting schedule. So Ryan Daly is going to share that with us.
Right back to me. Sounds like we got an update to the planning schedule just a second ago. So let me pull this up real fast for you. Okay, is that showing up on your screen, Chair?
It is.
Awesome. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier tonight, I said the 25th. It is not the 25th. It is the 26th for the bike skills area discussion. So that will be a special meeting starting at 5:30 p.m. And then additionally, going to that May meeting and looking at the chair, vice chair elections being scheduled for that night. That's also when terms end. So after talking with the chair and vice chair, we felt it made sense to move that to June when new commissioners may be appointed at that point. So making a small change there. I'm also may work with, or I will work with the commission leadership to discuss the possibility of a joint meeting with the Arts Council on June 2nd. The reason for that would be we're going to be talking about the proposed Parks and Recreation services, as well as the Climate Action Plan update. So it's an opportunity for both of your boards and commissions to come together and have a discussion around those items. We'll also have a follow-up with the athletic field use and allocation policy at that meeting also. Down at the bottom there, or on the September meeting, you'll notice that I crossed out the proposed services. There won't be a need for an additional conversation there. We'll provide that at the earlier meeting there in May when we talk about, or in June, I'm sorry, when we discuss what the proposed 23-24 service levels will be. So those are the only updates. You will see these open areas here in the fourth quarter. We will be filling those. Just so you know, we do have a number of items in the parking lot that we'll be discussing at that point, specifically the interlocal agreement, park asset donations. I don't know that we'll get to the park code in this year. It might be something that we work on next year, early next year. But we'll also have a follow-up on the Luther Burbank docks. So we do have a number of items that will, I don't want to say eat up some commission time, but they're pretty meaty to wrap up the year with. Any questions on the planning schedule? Vice Chair Struck?
Yes, thank you, Ryan. So the 2022 kind of mid-year review was crossed out. Is that going to be rescheduled for obviously a later date?
Oh, I'm sorry. Great question. I'm combining that with the 2021 year-end review.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so we'll do them all at the same time. It'll be much easier for the commission to kind of see the progression of services over the last 2 years.
Good idea. Thank you.
Commissioner Cohen.
Don Cohen, what about the facilities naming policy? Is that in the parking lot there?
That is in the parking lot. That'll
Okay.
be, I presume we're going to tackle that around the same time we do donations, assets, memorials, recognitions.
Okay.
It just kind of goes on, and it's very interesting. We've been getting a number of these over the last couple of weeks. So it's one of those policies that we need to get our heads around and move forward here sooner than later. All right, with that, I will pass it back to you, Chair McCarthy.
Thank you so much. Okay, our fifth item of business is commissioner reports or work plan updates, or anybody have anything to share that they did that's awesome in the parks? Commissioner Burstein.
This is Paul Burstein. I just want to reiterate the work that's being done in Luther Burbank. For as old as the surface is, 50 years old, they're really doing a great job cleaning things up, patching it up, and making a much better surface to play and prepare for the summer. So cheers off to the operations group that's doing all that work.
Awesome. Thank you. Anyone else? All right. So I just have a clarification thing for Raven and Ryan, because we have our next regular meeting, but we also have our special meeting. Should I say both or just the next meeting? What would you prefer?
I say we highlight the bike skills meeting as much as we can.
I agree. I agree. All right. So the next special meeting of the bike skills area is going to be on April 7th April 26th at 7. What time is it at? 5:30. Sorry, I'm looking at this and it just has TBD on mine. So it's April 26th at 5:30 will be a special bike skills area meeting. And then our next regular Parks and Recreation Commission meeting is going to be May 5th, 2022 at 5:30. And the time is now, what time is it?
7:51.
Thank you, Rory. The time is now 7:51 and the meeting is adjourned. However, as a reminder, commissioners, please stay seated until the city staff has terminated the Zoom broadcast. Good evening and stay safe and healthy.